contrary to that promise. Madam Speaker, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve the truth. It's their health and it's their life. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan.
I yield myself 5 seconds. The truth is,
recognized for 5 seconds.
We moved to repeal 1099. It was opposed by the now majority. I now yield 2 minutes to the very distinguished gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, a member of our committee.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
People deserve a serious debate on a serious subject. Unfortunately, while serious in tone, what we're hearing from my colleagues is not serious in content. I've listened to people come to the floor repeatedly talking about a government takeover of health care, which was judged by PolitiFacts to be the political lie of the year for 2010. Indeed, we instead built upon the current system that is a balance to meet the needs of American people. We have had another serious element that has crept into the approach from my Republican friends, the disregard of Congress's nonpartisan budget referee. It's reckless and unprecedented. It's never happened in 34 years. These are the people who provide impartial information which is being imagined away by our friends on the other side of the aisle. Yes, it will require Congress to follow through on the legislation to realize the savings. But the answer is not to turn our back on reform. It's to make reform work. The current bill builds on the current system. It incorporates elements of reform that have been supported on a bipartisan basis for years. Now, all of a sudden, there is the disregard we heard for a proposal signed into law by Republican Governor Mitt Romney. Instead of repealing reform, we should be focusing on strengthening it. Americans deserve a serious debate about a serious subject. Hard work to make reform work, not a ritual of going through the motions of repeal, which everybody in this chamber will still be in effect at the end of the debate, at the end of the year, at the end of the Congress. The American people deserve better.
Mr. Camp of Michigan.
I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Boustany.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in favor of repeal of this bill because it's going to fail on cost, it's going to fail on coverage, and it's going to fail on quality. First, cost. Premiums are going up. In fact, they're going up even higher at a faster rate than they would have if we had done nothing in many cases. With regard to the deficit, there are a number of gimmicks in this bill, double counting, excluding the doc fix, creating new entitlements such as a Class Act, which is a Ponzi scheme. And finally, it does not account for the discretionary spending for this massive increase in the bureaucracy that's going to be created. Taxes are going to go up on innovation, especially medical innovation. On coverage, what kind of coverage are we expanding? Medicaid coverage. That's a ticket to the emergency room. It doesn't lead to a good doctor-patient relationship, and it's ultimately the most expensive and inefficient way to provide health care. And those costs are going to be passed on to the states. And on quality, let me relate an instance from my own medical practice as a cardiovascular surgeon. I was once called to see a patient who was 101 years old. 101. He had carotid artery blockage and was getting ready to have a stroke. He had imminent symptoms. And I was skeptical. I went to see the guy, and this fellow was vigorous, strong handshake, lived by himself, independent, worked in his own yard, took care of himself without any help. And so I chose to do the carotid operation on him. Thankfully, it was successful, and I gave him 6 more years of high-quality life as a result of this. He died from some unrelated cause later. But in the absence of that, he would have had a stroke. He would have been in rehab, in a nursing home, acute care, lots of expense, no quality to his life. Madam Speaker, there's an art and a science to medicine. And the art involves a doctor-patient relationship. It's built on mutual trust and understanding, knowledge of the patient, trust on both the patient and the doctor's part to do what's in the best interest of the patient. But not only that, The doctor-patient relationship is where costs are incurred and quality occurs. This gentleman would not have had the quality of life if he had not had this operation and if this law had been in existence, which would have delayed or prohibited such treatment.
Time
I yield
expired.
back.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Could I ask you, Madam Speaker, how much time there is on each side of the Ways and Means Committee?
Mr. Levin of Michigan has 28 and a quarter. Camp of Michigan has 24 and a half. Mr. Levin of Michigan.
I yield myself 10 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for 10 seconds.
What the reform did was to make sure that the doctor-patient relationship was maintained and that there would be millions of more patients in the United States of America. I now yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Kind of Wisconsin.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 2 minutes. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding me this time. Madam Speaker, shortly after passage of the Affordable Care Act, a young mother in my congressional district, Beth Firstall, wrote me a letter. And she wrote it on behalf of her 13-month-old son, Henry. In it, she wrote, and I quote, "My son had a stroke before he was even born. He wanted to personally thank you for passing this historic health care bill, but he's only 13 months old, and between juggling neurologists, OT, PT, and speech therapy, he hasn't found the time. Let me be his voice. As a voter, as your constituent, as a mother, thank you." I contacted Beth to find out what her family situation was in this particular case, and she told me that because little Henry had a stroke before he was born, literally, by the time he took his first breath in life, he was uninsurable because he had a pre-existing condition. Now, I've been to Iraq 4 times. I've been to Afghanistan twice. I've met with our troops in the field. I thought I met the bravest people in the whole world, our men and women in uniform who are laying their lives on the line every day for us to better secure and make safe our nation. But if my Republican colleagues can move forward on this repeal today and look into the eyes of little Henry Firstall and not only say to him, not only that we have the ability to do something to help you but chose not to, but today we choose to take it away from you, then you guys have got to be the bravest people in the world, because I can't do that. No one should be able to do that. To the 20 million children that have pre-existing conditions throughout this country that this bill fixes. A young man, 21 years old, in Black River Falls came up to me after the vote and thanked me. I asked him why. Was there something in particular that he was most concerned about in this bill? He said, yeah. A couple of years ago, my younger brother needed a kidney, so I donated him one of mine. And because I did, even though I am perfectly healthy today, every insurance company I've contacted are treating me as if I have a pre-existing condition, and they will not insure me. We can do better than that. And that's what the Affordable Care Act is all about, to address these injustices. I encourage my colleagues to vote no on repeal, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Camp of Michigan.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Mr. Levin of Michigan. Mr. Levin of Michigan.
He reserved his time. It's now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New Jersey, a joyful member of our committee, Mr. Pasquale.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. There's not one member of Congress in these distinguished halls that have not been called upon to help a constituent who has been threatened to have their insurance taken away from them, whether it was heart disease, whether it was cancer, asthma, high blood pressure. I've been through many of them. And isn't it interesting that when the congressional office intervenes, they give things a second thought? It should not be that way. Who are the 2,000 economists we're talking about that are wondering about this Health Care Act? Are they the same ones who predicted enormous increases in the economy of the United States in the last 10 years? Oh, those 10 years we wish to forget. We have amnesia. Whether it be in town halls or small groups, when I have asked individuals to raise their hands if they were against closing the Medicare donut hole, allowing children to stay on a family's health plan till 26, ensuring Americans are not denied insurance for pre-existing conditions. No one raises their hand. In the last debate I had, Madam Speaker, just before the election, my opponent didn't raise his hand, and I went through 18 of these very specific parts of the health care legislation. In my district alone, repeal will increase the number of uninsured by 66,000. I can't vote for this repeal. I can't let them down, or their insurance will go up. How about the business person? 60% of businesses who go into bankruptcy. It's because of the health care bills they can't afford. I can't let them down either. Before I conclude, I want to make this point, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Last October, federal Judge Steith found the mandate constitutional because by foregoing insurance, individuals are making an economic decision to pay for their health care costs later out of pocket. That's how we get stuck with the bill. We need to end this.
Time's expired.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
That means that the people of Texas pay, people of New Jersey pay, California pay. In essence, everyone pays for those who don't have insurance. Let's get straight on this. We can't afford this, and we must reject repeal. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Heller.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise in support of H.R. 2. Last year, the previous Speaker of the House told members that we needed to pass a health care bill so that we could find out what was in it. Now members and the American people have had the opportunity to read it, and they don't like it. What they have found includes a $1.2 trillion price tag and more than 100 new federal programs and onerous mandates that reflect how out of touch the previous majority was with the American people. This Congress will reject these policies, replace them with market-based reforms that will provide greater access and affordability of health care. Repealing the bill would help more Nevada employers and their workers keep the insurance that they currently enjoy. An estimated half of all employers and 80% of small businesses will be forced to give up their coverage under current law, which I find unacceptable. Uncertainty in the business community means fewer jobs created. In my home state, where unemployment persists at more than 14%, it also means thousands of Nevadans continue depending on unemployment benefits when what they want is a decent job to provide for their families. Furthermore, we must act to prevent last year's bill from further impacting the pocketbooks of hardworking Americans who are already struggling. Repealing this bill will protect Nevadans from predictable health care premium increases of at least $2,100, block $570 billion tax increase on all Americans, and keep Nevada seniors in their current Medicare Advantage plan while preventing higher prescription drug prices. Madam Speaker, this Congress is in the business of cutting red tape, not creating it. I strongly support passage of H.R. 2. Look forward to working with my colleagues to pass meaningful legislation that will promote better, more affordable medical care. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to a valued member of our committee, Mrs. Berkeley from Nevada.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the chairman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this legislative stunt to repeal health care reform, and I'm going to tell you why. There are 600,000 of my fellow Nevadans who have no health insurance. This doesn't mean that they don't get sick. It means that they wait until they're very sick and then they go to the emergency rooms to get care. Every hospital in southern Nevada is operating in the red. Why is that? Because the cost of providing health care to the uninsured in emergency rooms is astronomical. But there's more. If we repeal this bill, we'll be eliminating the pre-existing condition ban. If you have a pre-existing condition, which at least 129,000 people in my congressional district have, you will not be able to get any insurance at all. If we repeal this bill, all of those 20-somethings who are living at home and because of the economy they can't find a job, they're not going to be able to stay on their parents' health care plan. That's 26,000 people in my congressional district, including my 2 children. The health care reform bill eliminates lifetime caps. Ask Giselle Scott, age 8, or Michael Braun, age 5. They both have juvenile diabetes and they both already exceeded their lifetime caps. Better yet, why don't you ask their mothers how they're going to be able to afford the life-saving medication for their children if this bill is repealed? And what should we tell our seniors, the millions that fall into the donut hole, that this law starts to close? We changed our minds? And who's going to ask the 8,900 seniors in my district who received a $250 check last year to help with the high cost of their medication to return the check? I'm not going to do that. Or the discount that they're going to be receiving this year on prescription medication, it's not going to be available. I'm not going to do that to them. And are we going to take away the preventive health care benefits that will help 90,000 seniors in my congressional district alone? I won't do that. And what about the 16,000 small businesses who will now be eligible for health care tax credits? We're saying small businesses don't want that. I know at least one. Thousands more have contacted my office. Ron Nelson has a small family business. He also wants to be able to provide health care insurance for his employees.
I yield an additional 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Ladies recognized for 15
And finally, for those who are truly concerned about the deficit, the CBO, the nonpartisan arm of Congress, explicitly stated that repeal will cost $260 billion over 10 years. It appears that those who shout loudest about the deficit want to add to it. Let's fix what needs fixing, and let's not repeal this life-saving, life-enhancing legislation. And we need to do the doctor's fix, too.
Mr. Camp of Michigan.
I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee and Deputy Whip, the gentleman from Illinois.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the past year we've had an incredible national conversation about this issue, health care. And it has been robust and dynamic, and it has brought about a sense of clarity. You know, oftentimes we tell people, look, if you want to participate in the ballot box, make your voice heard. And I really don't think there's any arguing that last November people made their voices heard. And they said with real clarity that they want this bill repealed and they want it replaced with something that brings health care costs down and deals with pre-existing conditions. Employers in my home state, Madam Speaker, just got hit hard with the new tax increase that got jammed through by the Illinois General Assembly. 74% of employers in the Midwest have recently in surveys said that this bill that we're talking about repealing would have an adverse impact on their hiring decisions. Now, it's with no sense of irony that now Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker, said that we have to pass the bill so that you can see what's in it. Well, she did, and we do, and the American public does. And the American public said enough. They understand that what has to happen is that businesses have to be able to thrive and to hire and to grow and be dynamic. If we repeal this and replace this with the type of thoughtful health care initiative that is going to be forthcoming, I think we will do a world of service to everybody that we're trying to help, and that is to change this economy so that people want to hire again. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Levin of Michigan.
I now yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Crowley from New York.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my friend from Michigan for yielding the time. Madam Speaker, today we consider the first major piece of legislation of the 112th Congress, the first. Does this legislation create one job? Not one single job will be created by this legislation. In fact, if this bill were to become law, over 4 million jobs that will be created over the next 10 years will not come to fruition. Does this bill reduce the deficit? This bill does not reduce the deficit by 1 penny. In fact, if it became law, it would increase the deficit by $230 billion. Does it strengthen our middle class? No. This bill will not strengthen our middle class. It will devastate the lives of millions of Americans who are finally free from the fear that they or their children will not have health insurance. I've heard from so many throughout my constituency and throughout this country of the importance of what this bill has done for their lives. I'm not going to go back and tell them today that that's all undone. And despite what you may say on the other side of the aisle, if this bill becomes law, 3 million people in this country who receive checks for $250 will have to pay that money back. There's no alternative. You can say what you want, but as this law is written, that's exactly what happened. For the 20 million children who now have insurance, who's going to pay the cost of what they've incurred so far? Are their parents going to pay it? Are they responsible for it? The Republicans are not offering a single solution to this problem. They can't even tell you what their secret plan is. It's part of the Harry Houdini health care strategy. Now you have health care, now you don't. Our constituents deserve better. But don't just take my word for it. Independent sources have confirmed the danger that repeal will cause to our country, stopping job creation, exploding the deficit, and even shortening the life of Medicare Trust Fund by 12 years. This bill is clearly wrong for our economy and is clearly wrong for our country. We cannot go backwards. No way, no how, not now, not ever.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Gerlach.
Gentleman's recognized for a minute and a half.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, it's been almost 1 year since many of us here in the House offered a sobering prognosis about the devastating side effects of the massive $2.4 trillion health care plan would have on our small businesses, our seniors, and our families. Last year, many warned that concocting a scheme centered on expensive government mandates, $500 billion in new taxes, and bigger bureaucracy would weaken our economy and is simply the wrong prescription for bringing about meaningful change to a health care system that truly needs a strong dose of reform. Well, that prognosis has turned out to be painfully accurate. Small business owners are furious over the ever-increasing insurance premiums that continue to this day, and the 1099 mandate, which requires them to send a slip of paper to the IRS for every business transaction of $600 or more. A new 2.3% tax on innovators in our thriving medical device industry is also choking off investment and hurting job growth, and that's jeopardizing approximately 20,000 jobs in Pennsylvania alone. And all the enactments, tax hikes, and mandates could put an estimated 700,000 Americans out of work at a time when unemployment hovers at 10%. Let there be no mistake. Reform is needed, but not big government, high-tax solutions. No, we need common-sense ideas, ideas that would lower costs by creating more competition among insurance companies, allowing greater freedom of choice for consumers to buy insurance across state lines, and eliminating lawsuit abuses that drive up costs by as much as $150 billion every year. We have the opportunity, starting with a yes vote today, to begin working on true reforms that will lower costs and increase affordability and accessibility of health insurance. So let's start that process with the right reforms today, together. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan.
It is now my special privilege to yield 1 minute to our very distinguished leader, Mrs. Pelosi, from the state of California.
The minority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, today a bill has come to the floor to repeal patients' rights, to put insurance companies back in charge of the health of the American people, and to balloon the deficit. Yesterday, in the one and only hearing on this very important bill, the repeal of patients' rights, Democrats heard from Americans benefiting from the health care reform. Nothing speaks more eloquently to the success of health care reform than their own personal stories. After hearing from 7 of them yesterday, I said, I wish the entire Congress could hear your stories. I wish our Republican colleagues would have had a hearing so they could hear from you the difference this has made in your lives and the difference it's making in the lives of millions of Americans. And so I told them that I would share their stories with you. First, we heard from a young woman, Vernal Branch, who was diagnosed with breast cancer 15 years ago. The good news is that Vernal survived breast cancer. The not-so-good news is that she has a pre-existing medical condition for the rest of her life. As she told us yesterday, the Affordable Care Act changed all that. What she said was the Affordable Care Act represents protection from the uncertainty and the fear that came with being denied health insurance coverage because of my past disease. It represents, she said, it represents freedom for my husband and me to make important choices about our lives and our careers. Repeal of the patient's rights that is being proposed today would mean that 129 million Americans under the age of 65, like Vernal, would lose their health insurance because they have pre-existing medical conditions. Next, we heard from a mom, Lori Bresnan. She has a 22-year-old son suffering from celiac disease. Still a student, he was facing the prospect of finishing school and entering the workforce without insurance, but with a pre-existing medical condition. Because of the law, Laurie said, we are thrilled. We have the option to keep him on our insurance in the interim when families so often struggle to keep their kids covered. In a similar vein, Alexander Lataille, a new graduate struggling to find work in this economy, even though he has 2 degrees, one in atmospheric science and one in social science. He wants to be a meteorologist. He said that if he lost his ability to stay on his parents' insurance plan until age 26, he would be faced with a choice, either to pay my student loans or to get health insurance. Actually said, I would have little choice in the matter. I would need to pay down my college loans first and go uninsured. Repeal, as being suggested by Republican colleagues, would mean that over 1.2 million young Americans like Laurie's son and Alexander would lose their insurance coverage that they received through their parents' plans. We next heard from Ed Burke, who has testified before. He told me he had testified at the invitation of Speaker Gingrich years ago. For much of his life, Ed Burke has suffered from hemophilia. He has 2 of his brothers do too. He has 3 brothers with hemophilia. Though he has health insurance, he has faced the constant worry that his treatments could surpass the plan's lifetime cap. Repealing patients' rights has a clear impact for Ed. As he said, I will lose the freedom to keep my job if efforts to repeal my protection are successful. Repeal, as is being suggested today, would mean that over 165 million Americans with private insurance coverage, like Ed, would again find themselves subject to lifetime limits on how much insurance companies will spend on their health care. Next, we heard from a small businesswoman, a doctor. Dr. Odette Cohen is a small business owner from Willingboro, New Jersey. She said she will be better able to afford to give her employees health care coverage because of the reform. But she also told us a very personal story. It was very powerful about her 2 cousins, Rhonda and Roger. Both of them were diagnosed with cancer about the same time. Rhonda worked for a large corporation. She had health care. She had an early intervention, and she received aggressive care and life-giving care. Roger, however, received only pain treatment in the emergency room. He worked for a small business that didn't have health insurance, so he couldn't have that early intervention. Rhonda is alive and well. Roger died. As Dr. Cohen said, the choice to work for a small business versus a large company should not be a choice between life and death in the United States. But it was the choice for my cousin. Repeal, as is being suggested today, would mean that more than 4 million small businesses like Odette's, Dr. Cohen's, would lose the opportunity to receive tax credits to provide health insurance to their employees. As we know, small businesses are the engine of job creation in our country. Odette told us that she wanted to attract the best talent, and she wanted health insurance for them in order to do that. We next heard from Charlotte Theriault. She and her husband, Richard, are seniors on Medicare. Richard is a diabetic, and his insulin alone cost $1,000 a month. When Odette and Richard fell into the donut hole, she said, we had to choose between defaulting on our loan for our home or my husband's health. Well, we chose my husband's health, she said, but changes made are starting to end the donut hole. So families like ours aren't forced to choose between staying healthy and paying the mortgage. Repeal would mean that over 2.7 million Medicare beneficiaries would again fall into the donut hole, and Medicare would no longer pay for an annual checkup for 44.1 million seniors. One of the most powerful testimonials, I say this as a grandmother, mother and a grandmother, was from Stacy Ritter. Stacy has 12-year-old twin daughters, Hannah and Madeline. Well, they're 11, almost 12. Can you imagine having these beautiful daughters, Hannah and Madeline? They're 12 now. When they were 4 years old, they were both diagnosed with cancer. Both of them, the twins. At 4 years old, diagnosed with leukemia, Hannah and Madeline faced stem cell transplants, chemotherapy, and total body irradiation. But as their mother, Stacy, said, we were very fortunate at the time. My husband had full coverage through his employer. But because of the additional cost of health care, we ended up bankrupt, even with full insurance coverage. She told us stories about how the insurance company refused to do this, that, and the other thing. But in any event, today Hannah and Madeline are healthy, happy 12-year-olds. But they still have a pre-existing condition. And according to Stacy, and I quote, my children now have protections from insurance discrimination based on their pre-existing cancer condition. They will never have to fear the rescission of their insurance policy if they get sick. They can look forward to lower health insurance costs and preventive care. The repeal suggested today would mean that 17 million American children with a pre-existing medical condition could lose their health insurance because of that pre-existing condition. It would change everything for Hannah and for Madeline. In Congress, on behalf of these Americans, Democrats have made a firm commitment that we will judge every proposal that comes to the floor by whether it creates jobs, strengthens the middle class, and reduces the deficit. The repeal of patients' rights fails on all three counts. In fact, consider the cost to our federal budget. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, repeal would add $230 billion to the deficit over the next decade. Just less than a year ago on this floor, I quoted the late Senator Kennedy, many of us did, our inspiration in all this, calling health care reform the great unfinished business of our society. By completing that great unfinished business of our society, now patients and their doctors are in charge of their health, not insurance companies. Because of the wonderful testimony that we had yesterday, which was representative of what members of Congress have told the Rules Committee and told our colleagues and told us from our districts across the country. Because of their stories of success of this bill only being enforced for a few months. Some of these provisions, most of them only went into effect since September. Because of them, because of Hannah and Madeline, because repeal would be devastating to so many Americans, I am pleased to join a broad coalition in opposing it. Every organization from the AARP to the UAW and everything in between, the Catholic Health Association, Easter Seals, and the NAACP. I think we should send a strong message today with a great vote against this repeal, which is so harmful to the health of the American people, which is so damaging to our fiscal health as well. And to have people know that we want to have what is best for them. We don't want them to think that in order for them to have the same kind of access to health care that we do, we should say to them, run for Congress. We want them to have it because Congress has acted upon their needs, their strengths, and the strength of our country. So I urge a no on the repeal and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. Mr. Camp of Michigan.
I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Dr. Price.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, over the past 4 years, the previous majority took every opportunity to expand the reach and the scope of the federal government. You see, they believe in government solutions. We believe in people. We believe in solutions that embrace people and individuals. Now, as a physician with countless personal stories, those solutions in health care mean patient-centered solutions, not government-centered solutions. Now, it's important to repeal this bill for many reasons, but 2 very specific reasons. First, it's exactly what we said we were going to do. If given the privilege of leading once again, we would vote to repeal this bill. And second, it's the principled thing to do. If you think about it, all of the principles that we hold dear in health care, whether it's accessibility or affordability or quality or responsiveness of the system or innovation of the system so that we have the highest quality, or choices for patients, none of them are improved by the current law or the bill. Premiums are increasing, jobs are being lost because of the bill, quality is being defined by bureaucrats, not by patients or families or doctors. The good news is that there are positive solutions that embrace fundamental American principles that allow us to solve these challenges without putting the government in charge. And that's exactly where we will lead over the coming months and, yes, over the coming years. So, Madam Speaker, the status quo in health care is unacceptable. The bill that was passed is destructive to both principle and to patients. The work we'll begin tomorrow after we vote to repeal today will be focused on patients, on people, and not the government.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan.
I now yield 2 minutes to a distinguished gentleman from New York, a former member and an active former member of our committee, Mr. Higgins.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, since 1970, health care costs have increased an average of 9.9% a year, far outpacing inflation and creating a drag on our economy by increasing the expense of new hiring and undermining new business investment in this nation. This trend is unsustainable. Yet while costs are increasing, the quality of coverage is declining. Last year, the inability to pay medical bills caused 62% of all personal bankruptcies in this country, even though the filer had health insurance in 75% of these cases. That is 868,000 American families who went broke last year simply because they got sick, did not have insurance, or their insurer refused to cover their bills. This is unacceptable. I often say that health care reform needed a start, not a finish, and that we will be amending and improving the law for years to come. However, the bill before us today takes us back, not forward, with no persuasive plan to reduce costs, improve quality, and coverage. This challenge deserves a more serious response. I urge opposition to the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan.
At this time, I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Buchanan.
The gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I stand before you today as a self-made businessman with 30 years of experience. I've been fortunate to create thousands of jobs, meet payrolls, and balance budget. As the past chairman of the Florida Chamber, which we represent 137,000 businesses across Florida, the number one issue 7 years ago when I was chairman and the number one issue today is affordable health care for small businesses. They're the job creators. They create 70% of the jobs. The Business Roundtable says today that the average employee for their family of four is $10,000. This bill does nothing to bring down the cost. In fact, in the next 10 years, it's going to go from $10,000 to $30,000. I was with a pharmacist the other day, a private pharmacist. He employs about 20 to 30 people. We talked about various things. I didn't go there to talk to him about health care, but he brought out his health care bill. Just got it, went up another 22%. It went up 20% the year before. I don't know who my friends on the other side are talking to, but most small businesses in Florida that I know, they're very, very concerned about health care and the escalation of the cost going forward. It's a job killer. With the national unemployment rate at 9.5 and even higher in our state of Florida, this law is going in the wrong direction. We need to be working with small businesses on solutions to help them grow, succeed, and provide health care at affordable cost. They do create, as I mentioned before, 70% of the jobs. You can't get to jobs unless we can help small businesses obtain affordable health care. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan.
Madam Speaker, it's now my privilege to yield 2 minutes to another distinguished former member of our committee, Ms. Sanchez of California.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it's no secret that our economy is still sluggish. So our top priority in this Congress should be about creating jobs. It's certainly my top priority, and I want to work with Republicans to meet that goal. Instead, House Republicans are focused on repealing patients' rights, putting insurance companies back in charge, and ballooning the deficit. American families have suffered and waited far too long for the freedom and security that affordable health care provides. And now the Republican majority is trying to take that freedom and snatch that security away. If Republicans have their way, families will once again lose their benefits when insurers unfairly cancel or cap their coverage. If Republicans have their way, children with disabilities and pregnant women won't be safe from discrimination by insurers. If Republicans have their way, seniors in my district will be forced to return the $250 in prescription assistance they received under the Democratic health care reform bill. And millions of hardworking Americans will lose the freedom to start their own business because they'll be afraid of giving up the health insurance tied to their current job. This is a costly plan for seniors, children, and families in my district, and for the taxpayers of America. To stand up for families that deserve and need our help, we must reject this plan. I urge everybody to vote no on the repeal of health care. I thank the gentleman from Michigan, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The gentleman from Michigan.
At this time, I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to share a perspective from an employer in my district. Visiting this small business, actually a few hundred employees, but still considered a small business, we toured the plant. He shared with me the benefit plans for the employees. He went on to say that orders are coming in, but they're refraining from hiring new people because of the uncertainty of the cost of hiring a new employee. This shows that the health care bill, primarily, is causing uncertainty in the employment sector and causing employers to hold back on hiring new people. This is not good for our economy. It's not good for our deficit. Most importantly, it's not good for the American people. And that's why I'm extremely concerned with the $20 billion tax on medical device makers that will just increase the cost of cutting-edge medical technology for consumers and patients themselves. Madam Speaker, we need a patient-centered health care plan, one that does not depend on new government programs, one that focuses more on patients, and that will cause a lot of the problems to go away, Madam Speaker. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan.
Could you please tell us, Madam Speaker, the time left on each side for our committee, please?
Michigan has 15.5 minutes remaining. Mr. Camp of Michigan has 15 minutes remaining.
That's equal treatment.
Mr. Levin of Michigan.
It's now my privilege to yield a minute and a half to the very distinguished gentlelady from California, Miss Lee.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. Every time we take on or talk about this bill and take it on, this law, we really want to repeal the very important freedoms provided by the health care reform law. It's really a critical minute that we're not focusing on jobs. We should be debating how to create jobs, how to get our economy going, and how to reduce the deficit. Instead, Republicans want to add $230 billion to the deficit and to empower health insurance companies, mind you, health insurance companies, to take away patients' rights and their own health decisions that they should be making with themselves and their health care physicians, nurses, providers. This repeal gives insurance companies much too much power. Literally, their idea is to return to the same failed system that has left 50 million people, including 7.5 million children, without health care. In the current economic environment, where more people are without coverage and where jobs are scarce, making it more difficult for people to access health care or to keep their health care coverage is downright wrong. Repeal of the law would set us back where, once again, health care would be a privilege for those who can afford it rather than a basic human right for each and every American. When I voted for health care reform, I said it was in the memory of all of those who died prematurely because they had no health care, and also in honor of and support for those who will now live longer and healthier lives because they would have health care. Repealing this health care law really is morally wrong and is fiscally irresponsible.
Mr. Camp of Michigan.
Thank you. At this time, Madam Speaker, I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schock.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in strong support of the repeal of this job-killing health care law. How many times as American citizens did we hear the President say on national television, if you like your health care coverage, you can keep it. But for the rest of the Americans, let me talk to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, wake up. Because if you're one of the 80% of Americans who have an employer-provided health care plan that you like, you're about to lose it. Simply put, the burdens placed on employers by this new law are too costly. The estimated cost for an employer to provide the, quote, minimum essential package as prescribed by this bill will cost them per full-time employee $12,250 a year. As we speak, businesses all across America are crunching the numbers and figuring out that it's financially more beneficial for them as companies to pay the $2,000 per employee penalty and dump their employees into the government-run health care plan. The result, of course, will be that the 80% of Americans who currently like their health care coverage will be put in a government-run system that, of course, will be riddled with inefficiencies and limited options. Think the DMV or FEMA for your health care plan. Additionally, this health care legislation is riddled with job-destroying regulations, burdens, and tax increases that will stifle private sector growth and smother economic recovery in this country. According to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Chamber of Commerce has said this will cost 1.6 million jobs as it currently stands. I urge a passage of this repeal and yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Levin of Michigan.
It's now my privilege to yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman Levin. I really appreciate it so very much. You know, I've listened for the last 2 days, and I've heard my friends from the other side refer to this as Obamacare so derisively, mean-spiritedly. But let me assure you, what we're talking about that's the law of the land today is not Obamacare. It is America's health care for all the American people. It is the health care for that senior citizen who's sitting down at her kitchen table, thankful that she now has a 50% discount on all of her prescription drugs, and she does not want to see this repealed. It's for that youngster who now can be on his parents' insurance until they're 26 years old in these tough economic times. The American people want this and do not want to see it repealed. And I want to say to the American people, have no fear. Let not your heart be troubled. This law will not be repealed. Yes, they will vote for it today, but it's not going to be taken up in the Senate, and it's not going to be signed by the President. So what do the American people say about this? They want us to be concerned about jobs. And certainly, if we have to deal with this health care, why should not we be dealing with some of the critical issues? The American people do not want this bill, this law repealed. They want it fixed. They love to see Democrats and Republicans working together on the 999s. Sure, there's too much paperwork for small businesses. Let us work on that. There's medical liability issue, the #1 reason why kids are not going into medicine. Let us work on that, and the reimbursement rate for our physicians.
Time's expired.
The American people want us to fix it, not repeal it.
Mr. Camp of Michigan.
I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lee.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, today we're doing what we promised the American people we would do after the November election. We will vote to repeal last year's massive health care law. Most importantly, we will also vote to begin replacing this massive new government entitlement with common sense reforms that actually remove costs from our health care system. We can all agree our current health care system is unsustainable. It's ripe for reform. Passing last year's 2,300-page monstrosity will raise health care costs by $311 billion over the next decade, according to the administration's own actuaries. It will raise health care costs for seniors and cut more than $500 billion from Medicare and Medicare Advantage, which are both very popular plans. It will cause employers to simply drop the insurance they offer their employees because they've done the math. And they understand that it is cheaper to just pay the penalty than pay for the insurance, leading to struggling Americans being kicked out of their current plans they have and they like. That's not the reform Americans deserve. We need to include medical liability reform, where the CBO has scored that at a $54 billion savings. Meaningful reform will allow Western New Yorkers to start buying insurance across state lines to encourage competition. And meaningful reform will empower small businesses to group together to cut costs and provide coverage to their employees. Republicans are pursuing these common sense reforms because we made a promise to the American people and because we believe health care reforms need to address both affordability and accessibility. It can be done, and we're committed to making it happen. I yield back.
Time, gentleman's expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
I now yield a minute and a half to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the Republican bill, which would take health care away from millions of Americans, children, families, individuals. I have heard my Republican colleagues mention costs throughout this day. Well, make no mistake, there would also be a cost in leaving tens of millions of Americans uninsured. According to a recent study published by the American Journal of Public Health, uninsured working-age Americans have a 40% higher risk of death than their privately insured counterparts. The study estimates that lack of health insurance causes over 44,000 excess deaths annually. That works out to about 1 death every 12 minutes from lack of health insurance. My colleagues, let us not forget to count those lives as a very real and continuing cost. Over 44,000 deaths a year, 1 every 12 minutes. I urge my colleagues to support the Democratic plan, life-saving legislation, and vote against the Republican repeal of health care. It is wrong for America. I urge a no vote, and I turn back the balance of my time and request to revise and extend. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
At this time, I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentlewoman from Kansas, Ms. Jenkins.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the chairman for yielding. Last March, I voted against Obamacare. Rather than bringing down health care costs for all Americans, helping small businesses provide health care for their employees, and preserving Medicare for our nation's seniors, this law will result in higher premiums for families, costly unfunded mandates, including an absurd 1099 requirement, additional job-killing taxes, and more than $500 billion in cuts to Medicare. It was irresponsible to pass this massive job-killing plan by means of arm-twisting and gimmicks, and it is even more irresponsible to allow implementation to begin, given our national debt is over $14 trillion, unemployment rates are still over 9%, and many states remain on the verge of bankruptcy. Not only is the bill unaffordable, but it's such an overreach of the federal government's power, a U.S. district judge has already deemed it unconstitutional. Americans want reforms to our health care system, but they've spoken clearly. This bill is not the change they wanted. I will be voting in support of H.R. 2, voting to repeal this government takeover of our health care system, just as I promised my constituents I would. Let's repeal this bill so we can go to work replacing it with reforms the American people want and support. I encourage all of my colleagues in the House to listen to their constituents and join me in voting yes. I yield back.
Time generally has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I now yield a minute and a half to Ms. Edwards from Maryland.
Gentlelady from Maryland is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today in strong opposition to Republican attempts to repeal and dismantle our health care law, the law that Congress has passed to give health care to the American people. Mr. Speaker, this repeal bill may fulfill an empty campaign promise, but it really fails to put the key American objectives of creating jobs and reducing the deficit at the top of the agenda. In fact, the Independent Congressional Budget Office estimates that this repeal will increase the deficit by $230 billion over the next 10 years. And in Maryland, by contrast, we'll save $800 million in 10 years with the new law. We've heard the debate, but now it's time to hear the stories of countless millions of Americans who have a chance at real health care. I know these stories because I hear them every day, Mr. Speaker. Stories like Chuck, an engineer from Hyattsville, Maryland, who suffers from chronic thyroid condition and believes he'll be denied health insurance coverage should health care reform be repealed. Nancy, a mother in Germantown, Maryland, who's grateful that the health care law has allowed her 20-something daughter, currently in graduate school, to stay on her mother's health insurance policy. I've even heard from constituents of some of our Republican colleagues afraid about having to repay the money that they slipped into the donut hole. And I want to tell you about Annie, a friend of mine, 28 years old, diagnosed with leukemia, who would have reached lifetime caps because she and her parents are trying to save her life. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that we're here today. Let's create jobs and stop this theater.
Time generally has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
This time I yield a minute and a half to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Paulson.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. And, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this effort to repeal the job-destroying health care law that a majority of Americans oppose. Now, last year, Congress put job creation on the back burner and instead pushed a very partisan trillion-dollar overhaul of our health care system. Last year, at the Democrat leadership's request, Congress passed a bill to, quote, find out what is in it. Well, here's what we found. A laundry list of tax increases and job-crushing mandates. that will make it harder for small businesses to make ends meet and further delay an economic recovery. This problem is so serious that the National Federation of Independent Business, an advocacy organization representing countless small businesses that drive the engine of our economy, found that the new employer mandate would cost 1.6 million jobs. In and around my district, hundreds of medical technology companies are now facing higher taxes to the tune of $20 billion. We're penalizing innovation when we should be encouraging it. We're preventing life-saving technologies from coming to market when we should be promoting them. This is unacceptable. The American people deserve health care reform that doesn't break the bank. We need health care reform that lowers costs. It doesn't increase premiums. We should repeal this law now and replace it with common sense, patient-centered alternatives. Otherwise, our economy will stagnate, our small businesses will not be able to expand, and the medical device industry in my district will continue to suffer. Now I yield back.
Chairman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
Now yield a minute and a half.